Hello, everybody. It's November 27th. I think it's a Monday. Yes, it is. My name's Anthony Pago. This is the American Micro Podcast, and I'm here. I'm in Oklahoma City. I'm here with Rodney Hubbard. Rodney, how you doing? What's going on?
Good man. I'm here in Maryland. Everything's cool. Just had the whole Thanksgiving thing going on, and that was awesome. Had good food. Um, Everyone's cool. Yeah, I just want to say that TikTok is a pain in the ass. Anyways, and then I'm done. That's it. I'm good. Yeah. Anyways, it's a distraction. It's just like the most. It's the most major distraction on the planet right now. Um, so that being said, so what we're going to talk about today, what we're going to jump into with both feet and both arms all the way down to as far down the rabbit hole as we can go in an hour or so, is the conflict between Israel and Palestine and why it's so important. Okay, or better yet, why is it even happening? What's how did it take place, and you know and why people are suffering. And that's something that you really have to look at and think about, because I mean, the Israeli Palestinian conflict is what I would call a very complex and long-standing geopolitical issue, with deep, really, really deep historical roots, and several factors contribute to the importance of um, understanding the history of the conflict. Okay, and um, so let's give a little historical background, right? So the roots of the conflict can be tracked, or I should be traced back to the 19th and the late 19th and the early 20th centuries, involving the establishment of the state of Israel and the displacement of Palestinian Arabs. Understanding this historical conflict, which is also biblical, okay, is crucial for comprehending the grievances and perspectives of both Israel, or both the Israelis and the Palestinians. So um, the nationalistic side, and trying to identify all of these things, is very involved. Okay, because what the conflict involves mainly is competing nationalisms and identities. And Israelis see the establishment of Israel as the realization of their right to a national homeland, while Palestinians see it as a violation of their rights and source of their displacement. And I'm going to go into the territorial disputes. But what do you think of that? What do you think of just the beginning of all this?
I mean, it's awful. It's all awful. I
Yeah.
I think I'm I'm kind of numb to just the constant ramping up of war. But this one feels a little different. Like I remember the 90s leading to the 2000s. Was it the second Intifada? Is that how you say that? Intifada? Anyway, the
Uh-huh.
war that ramped
Intifada,
up
yeah.
after the
Yeah.
peace agreements, the Oslo Accord or the Oslo Agreement, after that fell through. Um, and things got really heated, and that's my most vibrant memory of the war between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Uh, just the mental imagery stuck in my head of like the rock throwing versus the guns. It's almost like the modern age versus the Stone
And
Age,
the
and there's
tanks.
lots of reasons for that, of course. But just kind of characterizing that
Mhm.
that's always been stuck in my head, and now that's starting to shift. What's stuck in my head every time I this gets brought up and people talk about it is I just picture the buildings completely destroyed, just the rubble. That's all I think about now. So I don't know. There's just this like lingering cold darkness over the whole topic, and I'm sure it's awful for everybody that's in the line of conflict there. Um, yeah, I feel awful for everybody. I'm gonna certainly do my best to give opinions on whatever
Mm.
we discuss, but I don't want to get into the trappings of saying something and making it look like I'm against Israel or that I'm against the Palestinians, because that's not the way it is. I'm not I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm married to a Jewish woman. I love her. And her family and her culture. I also understand the plight of the Palestinians, especially as a Native American. And there are a lot of really complex nuances in this. So anything that I say, I hope is taken with that in mind, and I'll do my best not to make any quips that sound like I'm trying to dog on any particular group alone. There's plenty of blame to be spreading around, but also plenty of sympathy coming from my heart. So that's where I'm coming from.
Right on. No, I mean, there's a ton of stuff, right? Um, you know, if you go back, I'm just going to go back as far as 1967. There's just a ton of stuff after that as well. But if if you go back to the Six Day War, which was in 1967, that was a significant um, conflict in the Middle East involving Israel and its Arab states, its neighboring Arab states. And the war took place from June 5th to June 10th in 1967, and had um, profound implications for some like key points. So the tensions in the region began. I mean, they'd been escalating for years, right? You know, border disputes, water rights, political tensions contributed to the volatile, situation that was going on. So the war was preceded by a series of events, including the closure of the Straits of Tiran, the withdrawal of United Nations emergency force troops from the Sinai Peninsula, and so it was Israel, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and other Arab states such as Iraq and Saudi Arabia also contributed troops to support uh, varying to and support the Arab states to a very various degree. Um, Basically, the bottom line is that Israel was victorious, and Israel achieved significant territorial gains during the war. It captured the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria and East Jerusalem, including the Old City, which was also captured, making a unification of the city under Israeli control. I mean, you're sitting out there in the desert. Well, one more thing. I mean, look, man, if you're a Palestinian and you're dealing with this, and you've been dealing with this for 70 years, like, dude, I have grew up not knowing a lot about this. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really know that much about the entire situation, how Israel was given to the land in Palestine was given to Israel by Great Britain, and you know what I mean. I really had no idea about that, but it's a tough situation, man. I mean, you've got a group of people who are the Palestinians who are basically in an open air concentration camp, and they everything that concerns their way of life. I mean, any and everything from water to the food that they eat to the clothes that they wear to travel is controlled by Israelis. Okay, and there's that side of it, right? And then there's the other side of it, where, of course, you're Israel, and you're like, hey, this is our home. Well, not so much our homeland, but this is our country, and we're surrounded on all sides by people who hate us, and we have to defend ourselves. But to what degree is the question? You know what I mean? And that's the tough side of it. I mean, I have some Jewish friends here in Maryland. I mean, it's just not even funny. I mean, that's not the issue. The issue is, um, you know, how long can you treat a group of people this way in an apartheid um, state, so to speak? In a kind of genocide, and not kind of, but so those are the things that have to be undone. And I mean, the 1967 war, the Six Day War, remains like a really crucial and pivotal event in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because what it did was it shaped the contours, like the boundaries of the ongoing disputes over territory, refugees, and the quest for comprehensive and lasting peace in the region. Which, we're all human, we all suck. So I mean, when it comes to war, and because that, just think about it, dude. That's what we're, and the way I feel about. I was in the Marine Corps, I was in the military. I mean, that's what we do here. Most imperialist nations do exactly what we've done, what China has done, Japan, and you know. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, I don't think I've ever said that I'm just devastated that you're one of my best friends, that you've had to go through the horrors of war, so you can understand a lot better than I can, even though you haven't spent time in Gaza experiencing these particular wars.
Yeah,
You have a much better perspective on what those horrors feel like and look like than I do. So I can only imagine and use what information I get from the internet, and from credible sources. I try not to go to TikTok for my news, but I feel like I've learned a lot more over the last since October 7th. I've learned a lot more than I ever did in the 90s and the 2000s about the history of the region, particularly um, the the historical beginnings of Zionism and the Israeli state. Um, and I found with that in mind, I guess we could talk about the Palestinian condition or history in a little bit, but I wanted to mention that I find it frustrating that the nation of Israel was decided to be necessary, not just by Israelis, but also by, like, European entities. Whenever there was this anti-Semitic fever going on throughout Europe, and globally, because of nationalism. Nationalism in many different regions would exclude Israelis in the particular nations that were having this nationalism kind of like firestorm. And we know what anti-Semitism looks like, and it's awful to be treated like that. And so that's what makes it frustrating for me that they have a strongman leader right now, Bibi, who is acting like he's been acting more and more and more like an authoritarian who relies on nationalism to treat Palestinians like Jewish people were treated historically, which led them to the necessary creation of an Israeli state. And so it's just so hypocritical, and I'm not blaming all Israelis or Jewish people, of course. This isn't about that. This is about their leadership and their government, and how I see some serious flaws in what they've decided is a necessary path. I mean, it's not going to it's not going to end this cycle of violence just because they, decide to decimate um, the cities, the standing cities, and their infrastructure, and all of that, and disorganize them. And there's going to be a coalition again, a response, a coalition of more terrorist groups. They will find reason to put aside some of their minor differences and work together um, even more strongly than they already did. Um, and I know that that's probably the goal of an authoritarian type who relies on, nationalism and conflict. There has to be an enemy in order to maintain power, that type of power. So that might be part of the plan, I guess. That's kind of my suspicion. And I feel really awful for the people of Israel who are vehemently, because there are people who are Israelis, who are Jewish, who are vehemently against mistreating Palestinians and using these strongman authoritarian type tactics to get this stuff done, to handle these attacks, because attacks do have to be handled. You can't ignore a terrorist attack from Hamas. It's not that Hamas is not going to go away, but I think it's very unhelpful to this rhetoric that's being used by the machine, the propaganda machine, and in earnest by some people uh, who keep stating again and again and again that all of the people of Palestine, all the Palestinians are responsible for Hamas, and then they stop there and they don't give the nuances and the history. And part of that that's important is they'll mention that they're responsible because the Palestinians elected um, Hamas. But here's the issue with that is they elected Hamas in 2006 out of frustration in response to a lot of corruption from a secular Arab leadership group. I can't remember the name right now, but there was a lot of nepotism and corruption, and not much was going their way. And so, of course, they wanted to change the guard. But here's what happened during the election. Most even back then, still like half of the population were children, and Hamas only got like 44% of the vote, which means a fraction of Palestinians actually voted for Hamas. And Hamas um, presented itself, of course, as a moderate group. That's not in question. There's direct video evidence, from the election cycle where you can see their propaganda, and they say, "Hey, we're going to be very progressive. We're not here to be extremists and to install these super hardcore extremist religious like views, rules, whatever governance." And then what did they do? Immediately, they said, "Well, we're not doing elections anymore," and they maintained basically dictatorial rule as a group, as a militant group, and they made it pretty much impossible for anybody to group together and speak out against them. And they used that type of power to maintain their control. uh, they were who was funding people's, paychecks and stuff. They, like you said, they were ensuring that Israel kind of held some leashes as well, and that made it incredibly hard for people to fight back against this group. It is a terrorist military, organization. Those type of people don't look kindly on you protesting against them in their streets. So I find it very disingenuous at best, really, for people to sit there and blame all of the Palestinian people for Hamas and say awful things like they need to be wiped off the face of the planet, as well as Hamas. You know, the people along with Hamas. I think that that's very, very, very dangerous genocidal talk. It's not an allusion to genocide; it is a request for it. And I just can't be on
Hmm.
board with a call for genocide like that. So it's frustrating to me to see the hypocrisy and the tactics used by Israeli leadership that is playing into the hands of the terrorist militant group Hamas. It gives them the exact type of response they need to maintain power and to continue using their violence. And that doesn't justify their violence. That is just the tactic that terrorist groups like that use, especially religious kind of sort of nationalistic. I guess they can't technically be nationalistic because Palestine isn't a nation technically. You know, they don't have passports, they don't have rights. It is just a military, group, a terrorist military group. So it's not nationalistic quite, but it sure does smell and sound like nationalism on their end as well. And quite frankly, I'm extremely tired of religious, nationalistic types keeping this world in a cycle of violence. Very tired of it.
Yeah, for real, for real. Yeah. No, I mean, dude, you couldn't have said that any better. That was just like spot on. I mean, and here's the thing, I mean, so if you look back um, to, I mean, like who is what is Palestine, right? I mean, that's the question you got to ask yourself. Like, we were these people living in the desert you know uh, in that region of the world, and but the history of Palestine is something that you might want to go back to like the Ottoman Empire, because it's a really significant period that, like, it literally spans like several centuries, from like the 16th century to the end of World War One. I mean, it's crazy, right? So,
Yeah.
like the early Ottoman rule was like from 1516 to 1831, and then you had like all these administrative reorganizations that the Ottomans recognized the administrative structure of the region. So, and Palestine was a part of a larger Ottoman administrative unit known as Damascus. And I say the other, I can't pronounce it's, I think it's Eilat, it's Eylet. It was a province. And then you have the cultural and economic development. The Ottoman, the Ottoman period saw flourishing in various cultural and economic activities. I guess, to get to the real thing, I mean, that could go through the whole history of the, what you have to understand about what um, what the powers that be, the imperialist powers, what they did to that region of the world between the 1920s and the 1930s, was, especially in the aftermath of World War One and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and the imposition of new political entities and new system mandates, was something called the League of Notorious Allied Powers, um, to administer and territories in the Ottoman Empire, the former Ottoman Empire. So what they did was they secretly, um, the British mandate in Palestine. Basically, what they did was they took over. I'm not going to get into all of it. They took over. Um, it's called the Balfour Declaration, but they took over, and they just ravaged that part of the world. The French, the British, the United States, and several other imperialist nations ravaged that part of the world. And so there's a reason why Arabic people they're done, bro. They're done. They don't want to deal with it anymore, right? So yeah, I mean, and they, again, you know how I feel when you're a brown country and you don't give the imperialists what they want, they just bomb you back into the Stone Age. And this has gone on forever, right?
Yeah.
The French mandates in Syria and Lebanon, the Iraq mandate, the Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula, um, um, like the borders of Saudi Arabia were significantly influenced by the emergence of the Saudi state led by the Saudi family because they found all this oil, right? So these people were like they were stupid rich, right?
Hmm.
And um, you can look at Transjordan, you can look at the Kurdish, the Kurdish question, who were an ethnic group and had aspirations of their own self determination and saw their hopes of an independent state dashed. Instead, the Kurdish people, or I should say, the Kurdish populated areas were divided into Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran. So, or I should say, they were divided among those countries, and so yeah, imagine Nevada or Washington State, or better yet, imagine Texas telling Oklahoma, whatever you have is ours now. And and trust me, Texas would probably win that war.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and if you don't like it, you know what I'm saying? And if you don't like it, we're just going to bomb you back into the Stone Age. You know what I mean? And oh, by the way, we control everything. We control your water. We control what you eat. We control what you wear. You can't leave unless we tell you you can. How am I wrong there?
No, no, you're not.
Right?
Well,
I mean,
you're not wrong. Except we do have Tinker Air Force Base, which controls the AWACS, all of the radar systems.
woo!
So if
I
we
forgot all about that.
if we turn them off, they go blind, and that turns it into a bit more of a fair fight. If we rely on what do you call that? Guerrilla warfare tactics. So I think Oklahoma might stand a
Yeah,
chance and give them a run for the money that way.
might, but I mean, population and like just the I mean, you guys
Yeah.
you're 3 million, they're like 28 million or something like that. But anyways, but you know what I'm saying. It's just,
Yeah.
but Tinker Air Force Base, I forgot all about that. Um, but yeah, it's not confusing, dude. It's just you know, like I'm watching this program for the second time, and it's about dynasties, like evolutionary dynasties that last, like the dinosaurs lasted 100 million years, dude. Like 100 million years. I
Yep.
mean, and the only reason that stopped was because of a really like Mount Everest size um, asteroid traveling like 10 times faster than a bullet, and it hit the Earth, and we all know the rest is history. But I just I we as people have not been able to get past our own inability, and it is something that we are just completely unable to deal with. Um, and of course, it's the Israel-Palestinian. It's been a situation, conflict, the Israel-Arab conflict has been going on for centuries, since biblical times. But given the fact that man is 200,000 years old and we still can't get past this, and that we still bring our grudges, and we cannot find a way to make peace. Remember when we were kids and someone would say, "Peace in the Middle East, man,"
Oh, I
and
forgot.
you'd be
I
like,
forgot
"Yeah,
about that.
peace in the
Yeah.
Middle." Yeah, remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Get into that,
Yeah.
yeah, dude, yeah. So I'm still that guy, man. I'm like, come on already. Like we've been at this for, you know, and now you're just look, dude. And okay, so I'm just gonna get conspiratorial for a second, right? You're Israel. You were like, I mean, as far as you know, military and your ability to find out what's going on when you need to find out what's going on. What's intelligence is concerned. Your intel, your military. How is it that a bunch of dudes on these uh, gliding planes or guy gliding bikes flew over the border, and it took you 6 hours to like even react to what was going on? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse. Not that we've discussed it, but it's just being discussed by so many people. But I think it does warrant stating it, particularly after that comment of yours. Like, how does that happen that they have that lapse in intelligence or response or preparedness? Um, I, to go conspiratorial with along with you, I'm like, it it again plays into the hands of somebody looking for power to create kind of a new war if their power has kind of been waning or is threatened, and his power was threatened. BB's he had to make a deal with very basically far right, if you want to take an American analogy, far right extremists in his camp
Mm-hmm.
to maintain that power. And it's out of the playbook to use an opportunity to shore up some power and to keep you in place for a little bit longer because there's the old, the vibe, the feeling that like you don't want to replace a leader in the middle of a big operation. Um, and I don't know that that's the case. I don't know if that's what his thinking was, if he even, got the. I know, I not I know. I believe that there were some reports that the intelligence did get some warnings about this. I need to look into that and make sure that that's verified. But I believe I read that there were other intelligence communities who warned them. But what it does tell me, or what I can glean from all of this for sure, without any question, is that BB failed in to deliver his promises uh, throughout the decades of using this strongman tactic, mentality, promises to keep his people safe. He did not keep his people safe. This was a horrific attack, and it is definitely it's a mark. It's a mark on his capabilities to perform the only duty he was basically there to do, which is protect the Israeli people and the nation of Israel. So
That's
if
it.
he can't if he can't do that, then why should he stick around? Why should he maintain the trust and the faith of these people? I think that the logical thing to do would be for him to for me, at worst, be like, okay, look, I feel like stepping down right now might be a little risky, so I'm going to promise you I am stepping down right after we get through, whatever operations, and then we're going to hold elections again and see if we can get a government to form, which is a very difficult thing. It's one of the reasons he's in power is because it was very difficult to form a government in Israel. There's just a lot of just like the United States. There's a whole lot of political turmoil, a lot of different opinions, and a lot going on. So that because of that turmoil, that is how he got into power, and he maintained it basically by making a deal with the devil. And it hasn't worked out. In fact, it horrifically did not work out. I think that the right thing for him to do would be to plan his exit and announce his exit so that it doesn't look like so there can't be conspiracy theories like this where people assume the worst and say, hey man, it kind of seems like you did kind of the type of conspiracies we've heard about with 9/11, where we've heard that the intelligence was there, and there's
Yep.
conspiracies they just let it happen so that they could do what? So they could install all of the Patriot Acts, like Patriot Act 1 and 2, and shift kind of control over to all of the private sectors and the government sectors, and prepare for they had the plans for wars to get the oil over in the Middle East. They just needed a reason, and this was the reason. Um, that was given to them. So with that type of conspiracy not being possible, but actually being bantered around, I would think, as a person of, not that I'm from Israel, I'm saying if I were a person of Israel, I would want my failed leader, the guy who failed to protect me, to start packing his bags and to tell us exactly when he plans to do that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think he should stick around, or do you think he should go?
Uh, I think, I mean, I think he should go. I don't think there's any need for a man who, number one, can't uh, keep his country safe,
Yeah,
who can't, whose intel is horrifically flawed. Um, you lose 1,200 people in one day. And then because you have to save face, you kill 10,000. How does that make sense?
right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's again, you're bombing another brown, and then this even it's not even a country. You're you're killing indigenous people. That's what you're doing. I mean, you
Yeah,
gotta, this is what a lot of people, real quick, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of Israelis, a lot, dude. I mean, I heard these interviews of people, former Israeli army members, IDF members, or just military people who fought. A lot of these guys are from different countries, man. A lot of Israelis are from Europe, dude.
hmm
You know, I mean, they have the Ashkenazi Jews. They're not African Jews. They're European Jews. So they have a different look and a different take when it comes to you know people of color, people who are other than, people who don't look like me. You don't look like me, so what? I mean, who are the real Jews, right? They come in different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and if you really want to bring people together, then you need to bring the entire Jewish community together and not segregate yourself just based on color. Again, and that's what's happening here. You know, it's almost like the only good Indian is a dead Indian, right?
yeah.
I'm telling you, bro.
I
That's yeah, yeah, like big time.
I get I get the sense that the only way out of this is would require the removal of BB, but I think that what is missing might not even be possible. I think that so Hamas, was brought in because a lot of the Palestinian Authority and a lot of the previous Palestinian leadership, all the way back to like when Alexander II of Russia was he was the Tsar, and then like he was the king of Poland and the what was the Grand Duke of Finland. Um, when he was assassinated,
Yeah,
it was blamed on Jewish people, even though the assassin was not, and that ramped up a lot of the fear amongst Israelis, and they well, that's when kind of things started rolling ahead to get to the Israeli state, and then you start this kind of cycle of oh, what's it called? What the British and so basically white people did to native colonization. It started this cycle of kind of colonization over there in that region, and you'll get
colonization.
arguments.
Yeah,
Yeah, you'll get arguments from people saying, um, there is no colonization. This is the original land of the Israelites, of the Israeli people, um, and so that's like hotly contested. First of all, there's just like anything else, probably a very mixed bag of genetics and cultures that came in there, and we know that to be true. In fact, there are some very good, reliable like texts historically that show. I forgot what was his name? Not Hammurabi, but I forget, one of the kings like around the time of Cleopatra, who Israel loves to proclaim was like, one of the
Hmm.
greatest like Israeli like founders or whatever. Not really because Abraham's the founder, but one of the big important guys. Um, the history, the archaeological evidence, and a lot of the texts um, support him being a very multicultural person. He wasn't a stringent, Israelite. He was into all sorts of cultures, and he was just kind of a hip dude who loved to bring in other architecture from other cultures, and just like to experiment with lots of stuff. So the area is not, wasn't historically and throughout like tradition, an Israeli thing, and then they somehow got, like spread out and spread out and then magically made their way back because of the hatred, the anti-Semitism. Um, there's just like a very complex mixture of like cultures and genetics and stuff that happened there, and um, the colonization thing, denying it, seems to me to be an effort to do what authoritarians like to do. Like, and I hate to bring up the Nazis, but that's our greatest, most recent example where we can go by the textbook. They went by the textbook, and other cultures that use these type of tactics do it as well. But they build a mythology. You've got the mythology of like the Ubermensch or whatever, like the Superman, and the weird like forest magic stuff. There was all sorts of occultish stuff going on with Nazis, even though they loved, their science and their math and rocket building and stuff.
Blitzkrieg
They
and all that stuff.
yeah, it was necessary to build up this kind of like idea of like, well, we deserve this because it's part of our heritage. Our heritage is this, it's permanent, and it's built on this really cool backstory. When in fact, like things like that's kind of a revisionist history thing going on there. Um, and I'm not saying that Israelis weren't there in the region, back in days of, old, but what I'm saying is like it sounds like they're kind of pushing a little harder on that like that lore type stuff to build up the nationalism, to deny the Palestinian people their right to that land, or existence in that region, or their lives in general if they're calling for genocide of those people. And that doesn't, the history that I've seen, the historians and the archaeological evidence, doesn't seem to support that notion, that this was just an Israeli land. Uh, and and I think that I think if there's gonna be peace, there needs to be a leader that shows up that casts away the extremist tactics and the extremist views, and goes more moderate, a little less religious, and that needs to happen for the Arab people as well. The Arab people also started going down a more and more extremist, more and more religious path as they were threatened more and more, and they were looking for strong men to protect their lands and their livelihoods and their families. Um, and there just doesn't seem to be a way out of that rat maze. Once you start going in for stronger and stronger men with more and more religious fever, and bigger
Yeah.
armies
No, you
and
got a
more and more
point,
death,
man.
it doesn't end. So I think that what needs to happen is the people eventually need to find a pathway to calming stuff down by electing leaders that are less religious, less prone to using the military to solve all problems. And I think that the path for me, I think the path out of that is probably to get investment from many other nations to rebuild the infrastructure. And I know this would take hotly contested negotiations, and terrorist attacks come right when negotiations seem to be making their way, to a finish line. Just like October 7th seemed to be. It was what, two weeks away from Saudi Arabia signing a peace agreement type thing with Israel, and having one of the richest Arab nations starting down the road of peace certainly wouldn't help Hamas and would threaten their position of power, or like their ability to maintain that
Not at
position of
all.
power. So it makes sense that they would disrupt those negotiations and that potential problem for them by using terror attacks to disrupt that stuff and get the cycle of violence going again. So that's why it's important that we actually have really good intelligence and really good security for both states, for Palestine and for Israel, so that you can squash any terrorist attacks before they happen, while they're in development. Then you need to invest in the infrastructure. Palestine can't be forced to rely on electricity and water from Israel. They can't be forced to rely on money funneled from Iran into Hamas for paychecks to make the people reliant on Hamas so that they can't criticize them, or else their family starves and they, lose their homes and their families' lives and stuff. We need an infusion of money and infrastructure that comes from credible sources that is not Iran. And it's probably got to be a mixture of nations because it needs to be a coalition of both Arab states and non-Arab states to show some sort of goodwill. And there needs to be a well-maintained, lengthy period of peace so that you show the people that there's actually progress, there's actually hope, and then they will stop voting for or just um, falling in line for strongmen or terrorist groups. They will start to take more seriously the idea that more moderate minds and investment in their communities is the way to go, as opposed to this constant cycle of attack and attempts at eradication of the other.
I agree with you. I always say, especially in that part of the world, that uh, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. You know,
Right, right.
and if you want Ahmed to grow up not hating the Israelis, you got to find a way to achieve. Look, okay, so peace in the Middle East, right? How's that going to work? How are we going to do that? So, uh, I think it's number one. It's extremely complex, and like you said, it's multifaceted. Um, it's going to be a major challenge for all parties, especially Western powers, parties and Western powers that are going to be involved, because you have the first things, the major things you have to address are the historical, political, and social, as well as economic factors. You have to address all those things, right? Um, the conflict in and of itself between Israel and Palestine, in particular, has been a longstanding source of tension, not just in the region but worldwide. Okay,
Yeah.
that's like everyone's like that's where World War III is going to start, and there's truth to that, right? You've got Iran, you've got Iraq, you've got Jordan, you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got Egypt, you've got Turkey. Turkey's got one of the
China.
biggest militaries in the world, and China, and they Turkey hates Erdogan, a guy he does not like Israel. I'm not going to use the H word, but there is a path to peace, okay, but it's challenging, right? So I mean, if it were me, if in a in a in a perfect world, negotiations, diplomacy, two-state solution. A two-state solution is huge. You're going to have to do that. I mean, the Palestinians are going to need. They're going to need their own home without Israel's um, intervening in the way they live their lives. Now, you know, governments like Hamas. Literally, dude, their whole thing is like it's like the annihilation of Israel. That's their whole
Yeah.
deal. That's what they.
Yeah.
That's what.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's so. How do you? You're going to have to combat that some way, which means you're going to have to seek like a ton of international support, bro. I mean, this is going to take. This is going to be like. This is like coming from some corner of the from like a different corner of the universe. That's what this. That's how much. I mean, that's what it's going to take. It's just going to take like a Herculean um, amount of just the the effort is going to have to be just gargantuan. It's just and not just I'm saying that I'm not just saying that no. It's going to have to be. It's got to be focused. You're going to have to go down rabbit holes. It's going to be nuanced. There's going to be the biggest thing is um, you're going to have to wrangle and how somehow um, make sure that those conflicting, um, you know, those conflicting ideologies that Hamas and I don't know if PLO's even around anymore, but Hamas and all these other agents of the Arabic world that hate Israel, you're going to have to find a way to somehow bring them to the table and put down their arms, which I don't know if that can be done. And you also have to realize that, you know, I mean, don't forget about Beirut. Don't forget about not Beirut. Um, um, yeah, Beirut. Yeah, just that corner of the world in and of itself. Um, there there there's more than just Hamas. There's more than just there's Iran. There's I'm sure there's just the Arabic world in general. Um,
Hmm.
you're gonna have to you're just realizing what the dynamics are there and how you're going to have to really I don't know if you want to use the word suffocate, but you're going to have to somehow derail um, those done things that to Lebanon. I said Beirut. I meant Lebanon. Beirut, Lebanon.
Right.
They've done things to
Lebanon. Yeah.
Lebanon that have not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they haven't forgotten that, and
Yeah.
um, and those are things to consider. I mean, uh, if you look, dude, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, there's so much politically, like geopolitically speaking, there's so much that goes on in that part of the world that from a humanitarian and just a military, like and everything else involved. That I mean, um, we're going to have to support people that we don't want to support.
Hmm.
We're going to have to do that. We're going to have to make deals with people that we don't want to make deals with. We're going to have to, um, you know, just use every. Hold on. We're going to have to encourage the things that a lot of people don't want to deal with, and that's just being a lot of countries, I should say, and political entities. They don't want. They're. I mean, they're not. They. Some people don't want to deal with peace. From what is it from the what to the sea? What is it from the sand to the sea? From the I forgot how that saying goes,
Yeah.
but
Which
you
is
know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
if you actually look at the map, includes a lot of other nations like that aren't too keen on losing their land right now. So yeah,
Not
it's a
at
very,
all,
very
dude. Not at all. And that's I mean, I'm just saying, and that's what I mean by, there's it's I mean, the Oh, I mean, if you want to look at it that way, I mean, think about it. Think about this too. In that region of the world, you know. So we're the United States. On to the north of us we have Canada. To the south of us we have Mexico, Central America, and South America. The east in the ocean we have the Caribbean, and to the west of us in the ocean we have well, we're buffered from everything. We have the Atlantic Ocean, or at least we thought we were. But we've been attacked twice. We've lost people on our own shores. That being World War II in Hawaii
Hmm.
and 9/11. But
Hmm.
by and large, you know, we've never really had any conflict or any war when it comes to our country, who we are, and the strength that we have as a military. I'm not going to say as a nation. I'm just going to say our military strength. Okay. Um, and then you've got the continent of Africa, and you've got the Middle East, and you've got the entire continent of Africa is still being colonized by um, Western powers, France, Great Britain, the United States. I mean, where does all if there's no Congo, computers don't get built, phones don't get built, right? What's the is it lithium? No, is it lithium that comes out of there?
Yeah, there's a couple different minerals over there. Not forgetting gold as well. So Africa is definitely where we're turning our
And
attention
diamonds
to.
and
Yeah. Hmm.
well, yeah, and I think Africans are also well. It's dude. Do you? It's kind of mind blowing because I just found this out. Um, the first real new home for Israel was going to the British thought that the British brought up Uganda as the first new home for Israel
Wow, I didn't know that.
before going to Palestine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Huh.
man. Yes, yes. Boom. Like I was like, what? Like how was that gonna work? Like you've got South Africa, then in Central Africa, you've got the I'm like the Dutch and the Israelis. I'm like, oh my god, you know,
Yeah.
it's a trip, dude. It's a trip because a lot a lot of people in Africa, like Niger, dude. Do you know why France has one of the largest gold reserves in the world? Because they get all that gold from Africa, from the continent of Africa. Yeah, that doesn't work unless they just. And at some point, it's got to happen, dude. At some point, Israeli has to do the two-state. I mean, the Israelis have to do the two-state thing, and at some point, Africa, African countries on. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to point out to anybody who's listening, I think you know this because you made the logical jump, so I think that you're making this point without saying it. Um, lots of comments on the internet and and TikToks and stuff or whatever from the limited number of them I've seen, asking why don't we, and I say we as like Americans, the United States. Um, some people will ask, why don't we just ignore Israel? Why don't we stop funding them, or why don't we just, wipe our hands clean of them? And the answer to that sits in what you just discussed, in that we are turning our eyes, for better or for worse. I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just explaining the way the world's working right now. We are turning our eyes towards Africa, for all of the resources and the development of that region. It's frankly for profit, right? And control. There's a lot of military, military strategic military reasons to get down in there, as much as we have been in the Middle East, and in particular regions in Asia like South Korea. But we're turning our heads towards Africa and away from the Middle East, We will never permanently turn our heads completely away from the Middle East, but we are focusing more on Africa at this point for good reasons. As we want to use again, not I'm not thumbs upping this. I'm just saying we're gonna use their minerals and their resources before we strip mine our own country. Um, and so we have really only one option, which is to leave the Middle East as stable as we can, and that requires there are only a few nations that we can actually logistically, historically kind of befriend or make deals with. There are no friends amongst nations. There are only interests. So there are only a few nations whose interests align with ours well enough to do dealings in the Middle East to leave it kind of intact in a way that benefits us. And one of those is going to be Israel, who deals with what they deal with there, and another one is going to be Saudi Arabia. And there are interests working against us very adamantly, like Iran, very adamantly working against us. They're funding Hamas, and that is destabilizing things in the region to our detriment, to our interests detriment, I should say. Um, so if anybody wonders why like we make deals with Saudi Arabia, yes, it's to enrich politicians and the people here who are already mega wealthy. Uh, but there is good strategic reason to co-align our interests with Saudi Arabia and with Israel to maintain the type of peace we need in the Middle East to allow us to get down into Africa and develop relationships that further our interests there as well. So if anybody wonders why we don't just ignore it, that is why. We are looking forward to the future as far as those material needs go. I'm not saying that that's fair or the way the world should work. I'm just saying that is what's happening. If anybody's interested in that bit.
Well, if you look at Dick Cheney and what he did with Halliburton in Iraq during and after both wars, especially the second war with Iraq, uh, I think the United States killed pretty close to like 2 million civilians in that war. Like 2 million non-combatants died. I mean, that's who we are, right? That's
Yeah.
We have not learned our lessons. You know what I mean? 9/11 happens, and then we're in a 20-year war in Afghanistan. Um, I mean, I get it. I mean, I understand it, but when it stops becoming about money and power, well, not so much power, but money. When it stops becoming about, it's always going to be about power. Okay, money and power. So how do you separate the two? I don't know. I don't know, and that's the situation we're in. Okay, you've got a lot of very greedy people, a lot of people slash, and what I mean by people slash politicians, that you know they're not interested in empathy or compassion. They're interested in the bottom line, and they're interested in sending poor boys and poor, our sons and our daughters off to fight in a war that doesn't even involve them really. They have no say. I mean, yeah, they're strong and brave and young, and they're dying for a cause that probably doesn't really make any sense to anyone, except to the people who have power and to the people who support, apartheid regimes like Israel and um, you know places um, like the people who support Putin in this country, which there are a ton of people who do. Okay,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Hmm.
Yeah, there are, and so that's what we're dealing with. That's the mindset we're dealing with. Okay, we're not. This isn't like I talk to these people on TikTok who have this image of people coming together and holding hands and walking up into the sunset to this beautiful city on the hill, singing "Kumbaya." We will overcome. Ah, dude, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Never going to happen. It's not. At least it's not happening. I'm sorry. I've never. I can't give mankind that much credit. Dude. Humanity,
Ye-
humans. I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna agree with you and say that like, I often hear dreamers who are on the more like sci-fi version of what you're saying claim that like if aliens showed up, we would coalesce as a species, and that might get us to hold hands with a new enemy. Or maybe if we got 0 point energy and had all of the resources all of a sudden taken care of, where we had all the energy needs to solve, climate change and food production and water desalination and everything was fixed. But the thing, like the reality of the matter is, we did a pretty good job at solving some of our energy needs with an addendum with an asterisk with nuclear energy, especially with the modern advancements and the architectural designs that protect us from failures. Nuclear is a really great way to pump a lot of energy out to a lot of different people, and we can produce pretty large volumes of clean energy, and yet we still find a way to argue and use our flaws from the past, our history, to condemn. And we have people who profit from other sectors of energy production who fight against it and use propaganda to convince people that it's unsafe and a bad path to go down. Um, and it works. You've got people on the left and the right who don't want more nuclear plants built right now. And so I feel like you're right. It's kind of a pie in the sky dream to hope that like any one thing or combination of things is gonna magically solve this problem of humans innately wanting to belong to an in group and have an out group that they fight against. It's like we're programmed to war. Like you see the apes. Are they apes or the chimps? But like they war. They have little warring factions as well, and it shows these are our distant relatives, and they'll cross a river in little troops and have actual wars, and they're like eating each other's faces off and spearing each other and stuff. And it just seems like it's programmed into us from a very distant relative of both ours and these apes and monkeys. It's buried deep in there from I don't know when, from like maybe when we were in the sea, when we were fish, before we crawled onto land. But man, it's dug in there deep, and I don't know that we're ever going to be satisfied, even if we get handed perfection. If aliens came down and made us their pets and gave us, food bowls and water and unlimited energy and clean air and healthcare, and they were just like, do what you want, like write your poems, play your sports, like we got you, bro. I
Dude,
think we
we
would
can,
ruin it.
we can't even follow the book. I mean, we can't even follow a book that quote unquote. I mean, okay, hey guys, this is what God says. Like this is the Bible. Okay, we can't even follow that, dude. Like
Yeah,
this is if you don't follow this, it's the ruination of all mankind. If we don't follow this, if you don't follow this, you're not a good person. You're not a Christian. If you don't follow this, Allah. If you don't follow this, Buddha. If you don't follow this, Judah. Come on, we've got
yeah,
all the AB. We've got the Ten Commandments, and we
yeah,
still can't get it right.
yeah,
It's been in front of us for thousands and thousands of years, bro. This isn't like we just make excuse after excuse of well I drank too much and I wasn't in my right mind. I don't know what I was thinking. She made me do it. I hated that guy. She hated me. What, dude? What? Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on, man. No, it just all of a sudden, now we just look stupid. What? Israel can't get along with Palestine? Really? How long's that been going on? Abel and Cain, Cain and Abel? I don't know. You know, Adam and Eve? Come on. I mean, what? It's right there in the Bible, bro. Old
Yeah.
Testament, New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You know, to everything, turn, turn, turn. There's a season for everything. Blah 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 blah. But dude, if Jesus came down right now, he would be a leftist. He would,
Yeah.
and the right wing would they'd want to crucify him again, dude. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
It just,
I
it's
I
just, it's
feel
just,
I feel like
that's how we roll. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I feel like in looking forward and trying to see if we're gonna be head towards more of the same, or if there's a glimmer of hope. I think that there's one platitude or phrase that actually will apply to being able to analyze, I think, correctly whether or not we're headed towards at least a long moment of peace, or just headed towards more of the same. And it's that platitude or that phrase. It's easier to tear things down than it is to build things up. And if you've got people in power who are explicitly tearing things down constantly to reach supposedly their goals, I think you're condemned to be Atlas, who's constantly pushing the rock up the mountain. In his personal hell, we're in our personal hell, and as long as we're tearing stuff down, um, in cyclical fashion, we're just going to stay in that cycle. As soon as we start building stuff up, which is harder, it's much harder than tearing stuff down. That's the nature of reality. There's the was it third law of thermodynamics. Things tend to dissipate into chaos, and things don't magically like appear into order. Teacups don't magically appear from shards. Teacups disintegrate into shards. That's the nature of reality. I think that
Well,
that's
the
how
third.
we analyze the actions of the men that are leading our groups. See if they're tearing stuff down, or see if they're building people up.
The third rule of the streets, right? There's two acts. First one is don't talk shit, won't be no shit. That's the first one. Second one is fuck around and find out. Okay. And is there another one? Uh, oh yeah, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. All these
Yeah,
things are there. Like you can't like, dude, why'd you do that? I don't know, man. Blah 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 blah. Well, you're going to jail, right? But I was just no, man. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Okay, dude,
yep,
f around and find out. I mean, just what are you doing? What are you doing? Why'd you do that? You know, like
yeah,
like hey, BB, how come it took you 8 hours to like figure out that you were being attacked? Like how did you not know that you were being attacked for 8 hours?
yeah, yeah. I mean, he decided a
How
long
did you
time
not know
ago to
that?
he decided a long time ago to slip on those clown shoes, and then he's surprised when there's a circus around him. Um, so, not a big fan of my man BB. Well, okay, so I feel like we've solved the Middle East crisis. We've brought peace to the Gaza Strip, to the Israelites, and to the Palestinians. We've done it. We succeeded. We have a plan. They
So
just need to implement it.
where's our red eye? Where's our red eye to the strip? I mean, I want to get to Gaza. I want to get to Gaza. I
you
want to get to.
you want to accept your awards?
I want to get to Bethlehem. Yeah, I want my awards now. I want my Nobel. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Uh,
I'm
Presenting the
gonna wait
Nobel
by the
Peace
phone
Prize
and
to.
wait for that call.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do right now, dude. It should be coming in the next 10 minutes because I mean, we're brilliant. We're so we have our finger
Yeah, typical
we
typical
have our finger on
Americans.
the. Oh, dude, we're so ugly. We're so ugly,
Well,
dude.
at least
The
we
ugly.
care. At least we care enough to discuss it, and I feel like that is an important part of the whole thing is keeping pressure on the leaders so that they don't feel like they can move on to the next hot topic and ignore it. Because again, you just go through cycles if you don't interrupt it somehow. So
Oh, this is
at
yeah.
least we're discussing it. So that's a positive thing. Speaking of discussing things, got any
You could
idea
talk.
like
Yeah,
got any
yeah. Just
ideas
what we talked
for
about. Let's talk about the continent of Africa.
okay?
Let's talk about the continent of Africa and how America affects that part of the region, how it affects our our American micro image here on
Yeah,
the continent of North America.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
we
America,
and I mean, and it
American,
starts from way back in the day.
yeah, yeah. Just a tentative title,
Now, what were you
perhaps
gonna
think
say?
about.
America?
No, I was going to give you a tentative title for the episode. Maybe call it something like American Interests in Africa, something like that.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Yeah, let's do that. American interest in Africa. And
All
yeah,
right.
so that's people for all you great people. Oh, real quick, I'm going to be putting on three more episodes tonight, and it's we're what is it? November, December, January, February, March, April. We're 5 months away from a year, but in the next 5 months, we're really going to ramp things up, and we're gonna crush it. So stay tuned. Uh, uh, what is it? What do they have to? What kind of button do they click on? The subscribe button,
Mhm.
and yeah,
And the thumbs
just
up,
hear us
thumbs up.
out.
All right. We love you guys. Thank you so much for having this really somber discussion with us. We tried not to make light of it too much, but we hope that you continue to pay attention to all of the problems around the world and in the Middle East. And Echo here loves you and hopes that you will like and subscribe, and we will see you guys later. I'll see you inside. See you. See you inside, Rodney.
Echo. All right, bro.